Hello and welcome to another podcast of Father and Joe. I am Joe Rocky here with Father Boniface Hicks, and today we are going to do another segment of our Virtue series, and today we're going to specifically focus on fortitude. We mentioned it a little bit here and there during our prudence episode, but today I want to specifically zone in on fortitude. So, Father, why don't we start with what is the church's belief in what fortitude is, so we don't mix it up with any secular outside impressions?
Yeah, fortitude actually corresponds a little bit better to the outside impressions. I think the word fortitude, strength, courage is a word that we like to use as well. It has to do with work, and you use the virtue of fortitude when you are striving for the good, which is hard to achieve. It requires fortitude to possess the good, to achieve the good that is hard to achieve, and also fortitude to resist evil that is hard to resist. So it's a strength, moral fortitude, moral strength, interior strength. We're not talking about physical strength here so much as that moral strength. So when we have to stand up and maybe expose a crime, expose somebody in our company who's embezzling, expose somebody who cheated, when we have to face someone and tell them, your work is subpar and I'm not going to pay for it. I know somebody who was overseeing a construction project recently, and the contractor, first of all, the person overseeing the construction project is a woman, and the contractor, being, it seems, a bit chauvinistic, thought he could just push her over and kind of cut some corners, knew that there was some stuff that was subpar, but was just going to push it over and say, oh, well, it's going to take us, so many weeks, and why don't you just leave it the way it is? And she pulled out the contract and said, listen, you signed this. This is where it says it. If you don't do this, you're not getting paid. And, he's kind of sort of shaped up and paid attention after that. But that takes fortitude. It takes fortitude to push through a situation like that. So the moral fortitude to carry out, to achieve the good or to resist the evil is something that we really need as Christians. And that's why it's one of the four cardinal virtues. Again, all the virtues are arranged around doing good and avoiding evil. Prudence is to recognize the good. Fortitude is to do the good when that's difficult. And so fortitude also goes along with things like magnanimity, a great spiritedness. People with a high fortitude have a great spiritedness. They don't shrink away at difficult things. They don't shrink away at big projects. They don't shrink away at things that require a greatness of soul. That's what magnanimity means. A greatness of soul. It's related to the word generosity. Someone who's willing to do something great for a good purpose, not for self-indulgent reasons or self-glorifying reasons, but for the Lord and for His people. So we like people with fortitude, who don't are not presumptuous or ambitious or vainglorious. Those would be the kind of negative sides of fortitude, but who are really magnanimous and magnificent. And also it comes into play in terms of patience and perseverance. All of these things require fortitude to achieve that good that's hard to get.
Yeah, so, well, first off, it's fun to finally see one that the secular world has completely destroyed and changed into something else. So that's a good start. But yeah, I mean, you can see how, well, it's the strength, how it kind of is the inherent backbone of the rest of them. Going around and being a pushover, not being willing to stand up for anything, doesn't really mean anything. And really, it kind of goes back to what Jesus said: those who are neither warm nor cold, they're just in the middle. That's effectively the people who don't have fortitude to stand up for what they believe in. It's as you mentioned, it's not always going to be easy. Certainly, we can make systems to uh, align ourselves with people who are going to be less tempting to put us in a situation where we need to test out our fortitude. That's certainly an option that we all can do in our everyday lives. But overall, this is when there's a problem comes around, are you accountable? Are you going to step up and do it? And how well are you going to do that? Or is it going to be after everyone else has done it, then you'll be the 50th person to do it, or will you be one of the first three? And I think that's getting to what you were saying about being magnificent, being willing to step up when things are hard to do it, even if everything around you is saying, don't get involved, don't engage, just keep it moving. To actually stand up for when there is a true injustice to do what's right. Not saying that we all put ourselves in situations where we see this every day or anything like that. And I don't think Fortitude is asking us to do that. But it's when it does come along, because inevitably it will. Something that is going to require a test to step up and to pass it. And I know that you mentioned that physical strength isn't necessarily an element, but it doesn't hurt. There is a lot of building yourself up. There's a lot of us that never want to wake up in the morning and go running ever. But especially when it's snowing outside. But at the end of the day, there's a great benefit from it. Building up your muscles does that. Now, it's not necessarily to make you stronger whenever Satan's knocking at the door. But the one thing I have found is that inertia's real. Once you start moving in that direction, it's a whole lot easier to pick up speed and keep going in that direction. If you're not moving at all, you're a lot more easily swayed. And that's something that, you see in a lot of areas in life. And just a thought that I had there. Some of the other podcasts, we spoke about the negative sides and things to avoid. And I'd have to imagine that this is why, in general, the church is against addictions, especially of the kinds that are the downers that just make you want to veg out on the couch. Because if you're doing that, you're not going to have the ability to really fight what is wrong. So I'm going on a tangent here, Father. I apologize. I need to have you anchor me and get me back into place here.
You're doing great, Joe. Those are great points that you make. And the fortitude is maybe it's worth recalling one of the principles of the virtues, that the virtue is always the mean between two extremes, the golden mean, we might say, the middle way, the via media. And the two extremes around fortitude, which again help to illustrate what it is in contrast to what it isn't, obviously are cowardice on the one hand, but then there's a foolhardiness on the other hand. That's not fortitude. So simply doing everything hard, or jumping out of a plane just because I can do it, or taking on a Goliath just because I think I can do it. There's a foolhardiness, a bad kind of daring that is contrary to fortitude. It's overdoing it. It's overusing strength. It's using strength imprudently, in fact, to return to our previous podcast on prudence, as opposed to, obviously, cowardice. We recognize what cowardice is more easily, just not manning up, as it were, to the task. And we do tend to associate fortitude. It's really moral strength, and so it's not correlated with physical strength. But we tend to associate those two, as you said. It helps. Well, it doesn't necessarily help to have physical strength in order to have moral strength. And certainly there are women who have been phenomenal in holding things together. I should check this out before I say things about it, but I've always heard that the Irish women, for example, really picked up the pieces when there was the Irish potato famine and their men kind of fell apart, and the women took the reins and just and that was it was one of the Irish migrations, I believe. Just like wrestled their men into action and got them over to the New World. Now, again, I'm probably getting some of those details wrong. I apologize to anybody who knows the full story of that. But I think the fundamental point that I want to make is, women can have tremendous moral fortitude, and we certainly see that in the saints throughout history. Every saint has been analyzed by the church to ascertain that they exercised heroic virtue in all four of the cardinal virtues in their lifetime. And so wherever we see Saint ST in front of someone's name, we know that the church has done a thorough investigation and has made a compelling case that they exercised heroic fortitude in their lifetime, as well as prudence, justice, and temperance. And so when we look at the women saints, we can see that, and it comes through in different ways. Some of them in enduring persecution. One of the perfections of fortitude is martyrdom, when we're actually willing to suffer death rather than give in. That's heroic fortitude. And there are many women martyrs who suffered death rather than give up their faith, rather than give up their virginity, rather than give in to the demands that they marry, rather than giving up the ones that they love and turning someone else in, or giving up their protection, like a mama bear or like a mama hen who would burn to death in order to protect her young, her chicks under her wings. These are the kinds of things that fortitude brings out in us, is that heroic choosing of the good, tremendous choosing of the good, so that we can do great things, so that we can be great-souled, magnanimous people, so that we can be generous, so that we can make great sacrifices for the sake of the good, for the sake of God, and for the sake of others.
Certainly, and I wasn't trying to say you had to be able to run a 4.340 to be able to be fortitude by any stretch. What I was trying to get at, and I guess I skipped a step as I'm just going through in my head, is that it requires a continual discipline to be willing and ready to do what it takes to become stronger. So, one of those things is to, when you see something wrong, out of place, even if it's going back to the conversation we had on prudence, not necessarily a moral decision, but one of these things that we have to talk about and do and confront, there's a discipline that has to take place there. For some people, it's very, very difficult to have hard conversations. And then you'll see other people who can have 50 of them in an hour and it's no big deal. Like, they just keep it moving. And it's this type of practice, discipline, to be able to do it. Now, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily, cold or a hard person or anything. It just means that you see something that needs to be done and you're willing to step up and do it. And just what I found everywhere in my life is the more disciplined people are, the more willing they're able to step up and do it. And also the better they are at it. So that's kind of where I was getting to with the working out part of it, because you're right. It doesn't necessarily need to be working out. It can be anything that requires continual discipline. My best crew shows up at 5:30 in the morning every day. They don't like doing that, but they do that. So that's a thing. There's a significant discipline to waking up when you don't want to be. It's cold in the morning. For those who haven't woken up in a very long time, then, I think that depending upon what your college experience was like, you see people in the dorms waking up after noon every day, versus those who go to all the morning classes. And there's a discipline that comes between that to going through it and pushing yourself through what matters. So that being all thoughts that I had about it, and kind of just wanted to clarify that point and go there for a moment.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Yeah, certainly having the moral fortitude to put our physical fortitude into the service of the good is part of it. And another area is in terms of our money. A rich man has an opportunity for fortitude, exercising fortitude in terms of the generosity of his giving or his spending for the sake of others. That stinginess is opposed to fortitude. It's a certain weakness of character. It's a vice to be stingy. It goes along with pusillanimity, which is a littleness of spirit, a weakness of spirit. That is someone who's kind of wimpy, who's not willing to invest, who's not willing to take a risk, who's not willing to go the extra mile, who's not willing to get up at 5:30 in the morning and make a sacrifice for the sake of something good. That stinginess or that small spiritedness is a vice, which is contrary to fortitude. But people with great fortitude can be very generous, putting their strength, putting their gifts, putting their money, putting their power into the service of those who are more in need. And so it's a beautiful exercise of fortitude, and we admire people who are like that. Fortitude is a very admirable. All the virtues, of course, are admirable, but we especially admire people with great fortitude. Somehow that shines forth through. I don't know if that's specific to our time. That maybe it's more striking in the face of I think there's a lot of pusillanimity in our culture today. People that are just sort of weak and pathetic and not really striving to do great acts of service, great acts of love, who are not willing to live great lives and really invest themselves in doing that, who aren't willing to step out and be men who step into the breach or women who step into the breach and fill the lines to protect others and to protect our freedoms and our nation. We're recording this podcast just actually on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade and just a few days after the March for Life. And it's always very inspiring to see people who come out, even from all over the country. I ran into some girls from Utah who had made their way all the way out to Washington. I mean, it's a huge trek or a significant amount of money to come out and then to spend the day in the cold outside because the babies are worth it. That's the kind of thing that fortitude does. It's like, yeah, these people are worth it, or this cause is worth it. This good is great enough that I need to make a great sacrifice in order to protect it, to defend it, to promote it. And investing ourselves in the right direction is virtuous. I've become a big fan of Jordan Peterson. I'm not sure if you've listened to him very much, Joe, but Jordan Peterson has a number of wonderful ways of saying things. He's, and he says, I think we're basically all pack animals. We all need to take a responsibility and we need to bear a burden, and it's the only way we grow. So that's the virtue of fortitude. Take up a burden, take up a responsibility, commit yourself to something, do something that's worth getting up at 5:30 in the morning for, and stretch yourself. And when we do that, we inevitably will fail. There'll be times we sleep through our alarm. There'll be times we push ourselves a little too far. There'll be times that we can't quite do it, or that we're stumbling around a little bit bewildered because it's 5:30 in the morning. There will be the problems that we run into. Good. Those are good things. Those are a sign that we're really growing. It's like if you work out and your muscles never hurt. What good is that doing? Anybody? We need to push ourselves so that there's a little hurt. No pain, no gain, no cross, no crown, no guts, no glory. This is all under the virtue of fortitude. So we need to do it. Be merciful with ourselves and be merciful with others when we fall short, when we make mistakes, when we struggle. We need to not set out to lift, to bench press 500 pounds. We need to start with wherever we are, but then push it a little farther. Take on the responsibility that we can take on. Even children can take on a little responsibility. Giving them a little responsibility is going to help them grow in fortitude, help them grow in virtue. So that's, I think, kind of the challenge for us is, can we take on a challenge? Can we take on a burden? Can we take on a responsibility? Can we exercise a little fortitude? Put ourselves in a situation that we need to exercise a little fortitude to push through and make sacrifices for the good, for the sake of others, and for God's sake.
I like how you put that because it's not just, as you were saying about investing, it's not just economic, it's everything in life. It's your time, it's your energy. And, it is going to hurt. There is going to be moments where you're scared that it's never going to work and it looked like this was the worst idea ever. And going back to your pack mentality, the entire pack's going to realize how dumb I am. There's going to be times that fear is going to be real and present always. You see it taking back to the college example. People don't want to go into church because they think that they'll be looked negatively upon. And it's just not true. Building up the fortitude and investing is something there. And then the other element of that is kind of goes in conjunction with the prior episode about prudence is not investing in things that aren't worth it or right. When people talk about, becoming economically rich, well, some of the ways they do it is they just work really hard and they don't make bad choices to invest in. We've all heard about these fly-by-night shops and Ponzi schemes that ultimately don't ever do what they're said they would or ever could. And it takes some courage to tell someone I don't want to be a part of that, as well as to be a part of something. And that's something that, to really push out there, because you always can invest in something to make your day better. And you also can always punt and just say, hey, I want to sit here and do nothing all day. And, as I mentioned before, that's part of the reason why the church is against all the addictive things that make you sit on the couch all day. So that's probably a different conversation for a different day. But to go out and to do what's right and invest your time and energy into what's good, both in prayer to become closer in your relationship with Christ, but also with what's good for your particular expertise here on earth to bring heaven here on earth, is all a goal that matters. So with that being said, Father, if you want to give some final words here as we conclude today's episode.
Well, and again, you grow in virtues by using them. So just really encourage our listeners to, put their shoulder down and press into the burdens of the day, press into the challenges of the day, and know that by doing that, we grow. We grow in virtue. We grow in fortitude. And if you fall short, you press into it and it gets the better of you. Okay, fine. Get up, dust yourself off. If it's a sinful matter, go to confession, get some help from someone else, and press ahead. We got to keep pressing ahead and really striving to do the good. That classic statement, whoever said that, all that it takes for evil to win is for good men to do nothing. And so let's be good men and women and do something to stand up for what's right. And that's an everyday thing.
And that truly is the only way to grow. And thank you for saying that. And thank you everyone for listening here this week. We'll be with you again here next week.